My name's Hazem Gaber, and today we're going to talk about functions. So, when we write code, we might want to stick it into a function. And I brought this up last time, but the important thing is that we write efficient code. And what I mean by that is we want to write, if we're doing something common, we don't want to we don't want to write the code over and over. So, um, let's say I have a a website and I have a login box and I have a a function that checks your username and password against the correct entries in a database. I don't necessarily I might write that set of code one time and save it somewhere and then reference it from all the different locations instead of manually uh, putting that code into every page. And this way, if I change the code, I only have to change it in one spot. So that's one of the primary benefits of a function. And we can write a function. We just give it a name, and then we tell software that this is a function, and then do something. So this can be one line, it could be a million lines, and then we just call the function. So anytime we want to run this function, we just write the name. So here's a PHP function with what we call arguments. So in this case, our function's name is foo, and it takes a bunch of arguments. So argument one, argument two, etc., all the way to the nth argument. And an argument is a variable. So maybe I can create a function, that converts Fahrenheit temperatures to Celsius temperatures. So I could say, function convert, and my argument is temp, and then calculate. Um, so calculation, and then return uh, new temp. So put the results of the calculation in the new temperature, and then a function doesn't always have to return a value. It can just do something. So uh, maybe I have a function that compacts a database. So it just does a bunch of things and doesn't return anything. Um, but generally, you want to return something. So now when we do the conversion, we just do temp equals function temp. So what happens in a function stays in a function. So so in this case, this variable temp here is only in the function. So um, we have to use it. Otherwise, the function won't care. Function doesn't really look at the variables that were declared outside of the function unless we explicitly tell it to. So this temp here and this temp here are actually different. And so whatever, so this variable in the argument section has to match the variable in the do something part of the function. But then the variable that gets returned becomes the value here, which we're using in our code. And this value, when we call the function, is going into the function. But this variable here and this variable here don't have to have the same name. And this variable here and this variable here don't have to have the same name, but they have to be congruent. So if this function takes 3 arguments, then when we call a function, we have to have 3 arguments. For example, a function can only return one variable. So when we give our function a name, we can't use the name of a built-in function. Most programming languages have some built-in functions that do certain things. If we're calling a built-in function, then we don't have to write it. It already exists. But we do have to follow the syntax. So few PHP functions are print, echo, and string replace. So here's an example of string replace. So in this case, I've said I've created a variable called body tag. String replace is a weird a function, and it's got 3 parts. So what we are looking for, and then replacement text, and then what we're searching. So in this case, I have, this text body. This is some HTML code. Body text equals percentage body percentage. So this is kind of maybe some code that's in a template and we're replacing it. So we're telling str replace to look for the word percentage body percentage and replace it with the word black. So that's what it's doing. But the string replace can be really advanced. So he's created, for example, an array, and he's called the array vowels, and he's added all the different vowels to it. And then he's created a variable called only consonants, which he's made equal to string replace. So we've written hello world of PHP, and we're telling string replace to replace the variables with, or to replace the vowels in this array with nothing, blank. So string replace is going to look through this string and it's going to take out the E and the O and the O and the O. And we're just going to end up with this. And we can take it one step further and we can do a 1-for-1 replacement with the array. So somebody's created an array called healthy and an array called the yummy. And so they're both the same length. So now we're going to replace all the healthy words with yummy words. And we haven't written the phrase into here because we've stored the phrase in a variable. So our variable phrase says you should eat fruits, vegetables, and fiber every day. So string replace is going to detect the first word, which is fruits. And anytime it sees the word fruits, it's going to replace it with the word pizza. And anytime it sees the word vegetables, it's going to replace it with the word beer. And anytime it sees the word fiber, it's going to replace it with the word ice cream. So if fiber was in here 10 times, it would be replaced with ice cream 10 times. And then, since this is a function, we can also output, um, this function allows us to add a fourth variable if we want, which is count, which is how many times we've done a replacement. So, in this case, we're replacing LL with a blank, and there's two LL replacements. So, if we write echo count, this is saying, why don't you tell us what the value of count is, and the value is 2. We had written echo string, we'd get good, go, miss, more. Any questions? There's a lot of, there's hundreds of functions, and every function has its own detailed uh, manual. So you want to look up the manual for what you're doing first. If there's any questions, please leave